Everyone, sorry for the late start today. It is Wednesday, August 5th. Appreciate you joining me today. Checking out some technical problems here, as per usual. So I have 39 headlines to go through today in this news countdown. Top of the news today, the Houthis have sank a vessel. Not clear where it was, if it was the Strait of the Bab al-Mandeb or if it was in the Gulf of Aden. Do not know. But they did sink a vessel. Also, explosions have been reported in Dubai as a possible peace deal, a deal to open up the Straits of Hormuz is underway. Now, everybody's saying, well, Trump's cut out of the deal. Well, we don't know. I mean, the U.S. is obviously affecting what's happening in the Persian Gulf. So to say that they're sort of not involved, that it's just Oman and Iran are kind of doing this on their own, that's sort of an irrelevant claim. Also, almost more importantly, an armed suspect who was casing a golf course in California, a Trump golf course in California, where Trump had planned to visit, was arrested the end of last month on July 31st. They're just announcing it now that this guy had been casing the golf course for a couple months, 6 weeks or something like that beforehand, and was finally arrested by the advance team of the president, they were sweeping the area as they often do. And that's how they caught Ryan Routh during that other assassination attempt, was during the sweep. So the Secret Service and other agencies were doing the sweep of this golf course, and they were alerted by the club's staff that this guy was back and had been witnessed several times over the past 6 weeks, taking photographs and video, and had an earpiece in. So we're going to get to that story as well coming up. So without any further delay, let's read the news. All right, we're going to go to this New York Post story here. Heavily armed suspect filmed Trump security at California golf course as modified weapons mugshot seen for first time. Janine John Tail, 38 of Downey, California, was charged in a federal criminal complaint with possessing an unregistered short-barreled rifle after his arrest Saturday at Trump National Golf Course in Rancho Palo Verdes. The felony carries a mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison. Okay. Well, federal agents were conducting security sweeps ahead of Trump's August 4th visit when they spotted Tail on July 31st walking around the course wearing an earpiece and taking photos and videos of security planning activities. Tail returned to the club Saturday, prompting staff to alert authorities. He allegedly approached federal agents and falsely claimed, that's another falsely claimed, I love when they use that word. He claimed he worked for the State Department and was assigned to a security detail. Now, we don't know the veracity of his claim, but it seems dubious and certainly false. He falsely claimed he was part of a security detail. One of the biggest reasons is he is being sought in connection with a firearms violation tied to a robbery. So if he's part of a security detail, he certainly wouldn't be being investigated for such things. Deputies found a 16-round magazine loaded with hollow point ammunition in his pocket. Ooh, hollow point ammunition. So he was carrying around a magazine, but he didn't have his gun with him. A search of his pickup truck turned up a loaded 9mm pistol with a round chambered. Well, that's loaded. Another loaded magazine filled with hollow point ammunition, binoculars, and a badge labeled security protection detail were also discovered. Certainly interesting. So he's impersonating a security agent. Investigators then searched Taylor's home Sunday, where they seized an illegally modified AR platform rifle that had never been registered in the National Firearms Registration and Transfer Record for SBRs, along with additional firearms, ammunition, high-capacity magazines for California, body armor, and an earpiece, 2 radio signal devices, and notebooks containing concerning statements. Well, that's interesting. What are the concerning statements? Apparently this guy is an ex-Marine. What was he doing there? Was he part of a security detail? Is he sort of a clandestine contractor, or did he have nefarious intent? Taylor is also facing firearms-related charges and a 2025 robbery case in Los Angeles Superior Court where he was granted $250,000 bail. So he's already being investigated on that. As I mentioned, he's a former Marine. What he was doing there, casing the property, it seems nefarious as hell. Moving on with the stories here from Market Watch. Stock market today down, and S&P 500 eye fresh records. NASDAQ also called higher despite falls for SpaceX and AMD shares after earnings. ADP jobs data falls short of expectations, of course. And the Associated Press is reporting U.S. stocks hit records as profits keep piling up for Palantir and others while oil prices ease. Brent crude, the international standard, sank 5.3% to 79.36 per barrel as hope once again took over from the fear in the oil market and had swung sharply between 72 and 102 through July on uncertainty about whether the war in Iran would allow oil tankers to freely exit the Persian Gulf again to deliver crude around the world. Well, we're going to get to the particulars in that in just a second. As I mentioned, some tankers are going through, not many. I think the count is 2 today. It jerked up and down many times as uncertainty built, receded, and then built again, not only week to week, but also hour to hour. Analysts warn more swings could be ahead. But the latest drop in oil prices nevertheless helped ease Wall Street's worries about inflation. UK Express, Dubai explosions, huge smoke seen near Palm Jumeirah after loud bangs in Jebel Ali. Explosions have been reported in the Emirati city. So that's all you need to know. Are these drone or missile strikes? Now, we're going to get to the even more important story in just a second, and there's a lot going on here that I'm going to discuss, certainly. The New York Post, U.S. temporary deal with Iran to open Strait of Hormuz, and it doesn't include tolls, report. So this is the New York Post saying the U.S., Iran, and Oman are nearing a deal that would temporarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz without any tolls, with an agreement expected to be announced as soon as today. The deal under consideration, would establish a 60-day agreement between Oman and Iran for shipping in strategic strait. Additionally, the countries would begin removing naval mines from the strait's median lane within 30 days. But the Telegraph says Trump cut out of new deal to reopen Strait of Hormuz. Iran and Oman close to finalize an agreement that would see commercial ships charged for passage. Well, they say there's no charge. And if you look at the deal, they're saying, well, there's going to be a fee, and that's to cover environmental costs from shipping, realistically to probably clean up the oil spill that I'm going to report on in just a second. That came from a grounded tanker. You see, the Omanian route is very close to the coast of Oman, and the waters there are not as deep as they could be. There's some other particulars involving that oil spill I'm going to get to in just a second. But let's not forget the National Review states it plain and clear: Iran owns the Strait of Hormuz. Enough time has passed for a conclusion. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and there's essentially nothing we can do about it. No deal, no ceasefire, no umpteenth round of bombing will change this reality. It is the outcome of dominoes that fell months ago, which the Trump administration has proven incapable of standing back up. Within the first month of the war, we made it so Iran had almost nothing left to lose. We assassinated its leadership, sunk its navy, buried its nuclear material, and ravaged its industrial base and destroyed its missile facilities. Okay. We all knew this would happen. So that's the reality of that. That's why I don't agree with this policy decision, but we're here now. So what are we going to do? I say keep bombing. And that's what most people say is just keep bombing. They apparently, according to Trump came on and said they want a deal badly. So as soon as we're close to a deal, what happens? Zero hedge oil markets price in an Iran deal that does not yet exist. Oil prices tumbled Tuesday as traders once again priced in a U.S.-Iran agreement before anyone had actually signed one. The WTI was trading at 75, and Brent had fallen to 79, as I just reported. So here's the Strait of Hormuz tracker. Only 2 ships have passed in the last 72 hours. As I previously mentioned, ships are transiting. They shut off their transponders and move across at night, but it's really up to the owners and the insurance companies. Now we're going to get the Washington Times article, story number 10, oil spill from grounded tanker off Oman expands sharply, satellite images show. Then they have this bunch of gobbledygook about Greenpeace is monitoring the spill, whatever. The tanker has been grounded since June, according to 2 shipping and maritime news outlets, which reported that the crew reported an explosion on board at the time. It has been or is likely to be involved in activity whose object or effect is to destabilize Ukraine, says the UK government, or to support the Russian government. So this is a dark fleet tanker that apparently was sabotaged during its route out there. Who sabotaged? Was it struck by an Iranian missile? There was an explosion on board. Was it hit by an American missile? Was it sabotaged by Ukrainians or Ukrainian that brought a bomb on board? We don't know, but there is an environmental catastrophe brewing there. More importantly, though, story number 11, zero hedge, Brent bounces as Houthis attack sink vessel off Yemen with sea drone. The Houthis have quickly made good on their earlier threat, with the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center having reported the following fresh attack off Yemen. It doesn't say where off Yemen. The CSO of a vessel had reported that the vessel was attacked by a crew, but an uncrewed surface vessel which caused a fire on board, so a sea drone. The crew had been rescued by local authorities and are safe and well. The vessel has been reported as sunk. There's a little mistake there. The vessels are advised to transit the Bab el-Mandeb Strait with caution. Suspicious and report any suspicious activity. So I've been plagued with a bunch of shit going on this morning that I'm trying to put out fires. And hence the late start today. There's still a bunch of shit I have to do when we're done here today, but let's get on with the story. The stricken vessel's crew has reportedly been rescued after the fire on board and subsequent sinking. The Omani deal to reopen the Iran says the Omani deal has nothing to do with the United States. Well, that's the only way they'll arrive at a deal is if they say they're not going to deal with the United States. Well, we should just keep bombing. I already reported Brent crude bounced off a $78 a barrel level early Wednesday. That's today. After Iran-backed Houthi militants threatened to attack Saudi oil tankers in the northern Red Sea. Well, that's pretty far up there. So we'll see if they have that sort of capability. Which is going to lead me to my next story here, which is even more important. Zero hedge. U.S. expands strategic foothold on Somalia's coast as Yemen conflict simmers. A U.S. military delegation visited the local government in Somalia's northeastern Puntland region on Sunday and signed a deal to expand the U.S. military presence in Basaso, a port city off the Gulf of Aden. Very important. I'm going to show you a map in just a second. The president of the Puntland state held talks with a delegation led by Major General Claude Tudor, the commander of U.S. Special Operations Command in Africa. Now it's shaping up, and we're going to talk about what that means. And again, I'm usually right with my predictions. I'm usually right, period. Puntland and the United States also signed a new agreement to expand their cooperation. Under the agreement, the United States will expand its military base in Basaso to improve operations against terrorism, and that's what it is, and to protect maritime security. As expanded U.S. military presence in Basaso could be used as a launch pad for operations against Yemen's Ansar Allah, also known as the Houthis, and the deal comes as the Ansar Allah is enforcing a new maritime blockade on Saudi Arabia's Red Sea ports, which began after Saudi's strikes on Yemen's Sana'a International Airport, attacks that reignited the conflict that was in a state of ceasefire since 2022. All right, I'm going to get to the map in just a second because the map is important. But the U.S. Puntland deal bypassed the U.S.-backed federal government in Mogadishu, which has been at odds with Puntland amid political crisis and changed by a constitution made by Somali president. Puntland withdrew from the federal system in 2024. And then there's the case of Somaliland. So you look at the map here, Somaliland, self-declared independence, is the northern tip of Somalia. Just like Eritrea broke from Ethiopia. It is unclear, and this is all has to do with actually Western interests. It's all unclear if any deals were signed in that meeting, but Israel recently became the first to recognize Somaliland as an independent country and is seeking to establish a military intelligence presence for operations against Yemen, which Perry and I discussed at length months ago. But now the U.S. is developing their own base in the northern strip of the Gulf of Aden in Somalia proper, not in Somaliland. Now, the Puntland state, so you can see here, which is shaded in this area, shows where Basaso is. And what is the shaded area? The northeastern state and disputed territory. This is a better version of the map here. As you can see, the Puntland state isn't the shaded area. It's the one with a direct access to the Gulf of Aden. And as I said previously, I backed, and I believe we will, send ground troops into Yemen to dismantle Ansar Allah or the Houthis because of what they're doing here. We can't have that. And it'd be a much easier military operation than what we're facing against Iran. And allowing an Iranian proxy right now to expand the war to the other ports in the Red Sea, and especially another narrow strait, the Ba el Mandab Strait, is unacceptable. And I'm not saying that, it's not going to involve some hardship for American troops, but as I said previously, they're not going to put regular army troops in Yemen. It's going to be, when we talk about boots on the ground, we're going to talk about quick strike forces made up of special operations. So you can see where Basaso is. It's a short hop from there into Yemen, Houthi-controlled Yemen. Moving on to the next story here, story number 13, the new McCarthy's 40% of professors against hiring a Trump voter. Yeah, no shit. While far left hires are common, even a moderate Republican is a rarity on faculties in a country with a majority of conservative and libertarian voters. Well, that's a whole issue. Is this whole active measures, the ideological subversion that's been going on in this country for some time, really since the advent of postmodernism, where they get into institutional bureaucracies, take them over, and become lifers there. And what they do is they resist. It's the ideological subversion. They resist any opposition, political ideology, political opposition ideology. So any libertarian, constitutionalist, or conservative small government, small spending, which is... So the author says in my book, The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in the Age of Rage, he discusses the arguments to justify current levels of intolerance and orthodoxy in higher education. There are few remaining conservatives or libertarians on law school faculties which have been purged of dissenting voices through a biased hiring and promotion system. Not only that, but outright, you just make things uncomfortable for people you don't like. It's a soft discrimination, right? So people that are already, first of all, they don't hire new conservatives, and the conservatives that might be tenured there already, they just make life difficult for them, call them racist, attack everything they do or say as being, against equity. All right, let's get to the primaries and the elections. First off, the New York Times, story number 14, Arizona's Democratic governor set to pick a Republican running mate. Governor Katie Hobbs locked in competitive re-election battle plans to tap a moderate former mayor of Mesa, Arizona, John Giles, to serve as her lieutenant governor if she wins in November. Okay. I don't think that's going to help her chances. I don't understand, folks. Obviously, I'm conservative, but I used to be more liberal for certain, especially when I was younger. I toyed around with syndicalism and all this other stuff. Anarcho, socialism, whatever. But realistically, once you have, it's all about the money. So as long as people understand that, and debt slavery, indentured servitude, how money is created, right, with a fractional reserve system, and then the borrowing and the undermining of the dollar and all this other stuff. So that's what made me conservative, because you're basically shooting yourself in the foot to fund programs you just can't afford. And what do they do? What do people always do with budgets? It's got to go up. The budgets never go down, so the budgets have to go up. So you increasingly have the need to borrow from the bankers, which we're all enslaved to, et cetera, et cetera. So to get out of that, I turned more conservative, obviously. But I just don't understand this strong march to the radical extreme left by adults that presumably know a thing or two about budgeting dollars effectively. I don't understand this. I still don't think people know how money is created and the history of socialism. And we're going to get into that in just a second. Fox News story number 15: Squad Socialist scores re-election nod as radical wave continues to sweep party. The DCA-backed Squad member secured her 5th-term nomination as far-left candidates unseat incumbents across the country. Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat of Michigan, one of the Congress's most outspoken progressives, a member of the Squad, won the 12th Congressional District's Democratic primary Tuesday evening, teeing up her re-election for a 5th term. When Tlaib and fellow Squad members joined the House of Representatives in 2019, their campaigns stood out as for their far-left views. Tlaib and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat of New York, in particular, stood out because of their membership in the Democratic Socialists of America. Red-Green Alliance. The reason Tlaib gets elected is her district in Michigan is full of Muslims. And just like blacks will always vote for blacks, Muslims will always vote for Muslims. They're a voting bloc. So you see the same thing with the Somalis, also in the Dearborn area, or excuse me, not Michigan, Minnesota. Still tired. Haven't finished my coffee. But I'm getting there. Waking up. NBC News, Abu El-Sayed wins Michigan's Democratic Senate primary, notching a Midwest victory for the left. The former public health official has defeated Representative Haley Stevens, NBC News projects, despite face a huge advertising disadvantage. This just echoes what I already said. Muslims vote as a bloc for Muslims, just like blacks will vote for blacks, regardless of the policies. And it's part of the Building Red-Green Alliance, which is going to turn the United States into a socialist state. And then the socialists will dismantle the Constitution, the government, and make, create chaos here, as all socialists do. And, you compare, we've gone over this before, you're comparing Scandinavian countries and shit to democratic socialism. They're just doing that as a red herring. Scandinavian countries, A, are very small, and B, are very capitalist. They're not socialist. They have they have a robust social safety net, which they can afford to do because of their high revenues and low population. New York Times, pro-Israel Democrat fends off Democratic Socialist comeback attempt in Missouri. Representative Wesley Bell beat Cori Bush, his predecessor, in a rematch. He will be a heavy favorite for the safely Democratic district in November. The deal with Cori Bush is, and she was awful, but she's a Democratic Socialist. The black community is starting to back off black candidates that are tied to socialism, because maybe they know that socialism is slavery. There's one people that like their liberation. It's the black community. And why would you go under socialism? I mean, you just have to look at China, or even more extreme to North Korea. Just a news story number 18. Far-left upstart defeats ex-ambassador in Michigan House primary. Progressive activist William Lawrence was projected to defeat former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and Slovakia Bridget Brink, CIA, in the Democratic primary to represent Michigan's 7th congressional district. The result marked one of the biggest wins for progressives over this well-heeled, I think an intelligence operative, but whatever, Bridget Brink. Lawrence, for his part, was backed by a number of far-left groups and appeared to ride the wave of progressive insurgencies against traditional Democrats that has rocked the party in recent months. The district is centered on Lansing, and Lawrence will go on to face Representative Tom Barrett, Republican of Michigan, in what is expected to be one of the most pivotal battles for control of the House. Indeed. Indeed. I don't know why educated adults don't reject this shit. PJ Media story number 19 of commies, purple states, and the elusive undecided voter. The Hive Mind Party, Democrats, has chosen this year to have a full-on family feud. The fight is between the young commies who proudly let their hammer and sickle freak flags fly and the Dem elders who agree with all the commie stuff but would prefer to be more coy about it so they can dupe undecided voters. The author here says he thinks the independent voter idea is garbage too. Nobody votes like a true independent, right? You consider yourself an independent if you're not registered with a party, right? But you might be an independent that votes almost exclusively Democrat, and you call yourself independent, or vice versa with Republicans. But the one thing that he wrote here is about the Dem elders would prefer to be more coy about the commie stuff so they can dupe undecided voters. Absolutely true. It's what Abigail Spanberger did in Virginia. The issue here is the revolutionary socialist versus the Fabian socialist. And there has even been on MS Now and so forth and so on, where there have Democratic strategists on there and trying to tell the DSA people to shut the fuck up. But that's what they're getting elected on. I think they should be defeated handily by Republicans. However, never dismiss the idiocy of the American public, right? Because they are idiots. They don't know. Most of them haven't run anything. Most people, only the politically motivated participate in primaries and midterm elections. 80% of the population of the United States is politically illiterate. They don't know much of anything. They're not even they don't pay attention to the news. They don't read the news, and they don't do much of anything except go into the voting booth and go, I like this guy because, he's Muslim, or he's black, or he's young, or he's this or that and the other thing. But they don't know what election means. When you start electing a certain amount of people to Congress, or even a few senators, or particularly when you elect an administration in the executive branch, where that carries the ship of state. This is very, very bad news for the United States. Even if you don't like Donald Trump, voting against Republicans here and voting for socialists, you're going to be very, very uh, disappointed in where the country goes, because you can't. You're going to rack up more debt and more dysfunction, because you're going to borrow more, and that's going to cause inflation. Okay, Fox News, Trump-backed Bronze Star veteran secures party nod in must-win district. The Army veteran political newcomer now heads to the November general election to replace Representative John James. Bronze Star veteran Republican congressional candidate Michael Bouchard won a GOP primary on Tuesday evening in a bid to represent Michigan's 10th district. After receiving an endorsement from President Donald Trump, Republicans are hoping Bouchard's storied credentials and message of righting the country's direction are enough to carry the district as the GOP looks to hold on to the slim majority of the U.S. House of Representatives. Similarly to 9/11, COVID has destroyed the political thinkings and thoughts of the American public and moved them to the left. And it's very disappointing to see. And we're going back into this mindset of right around the time of the pandemic, 2020, when we had Black Lives Matter and all this stuff with, was it ACAB, all cops are bastards or something like that. I mean, just ridiculous, because if you have any money and you pay taxes, you have to make sure your taxes are going to the things you want them to go to. Most of your property taxes go to schools anyway. I don't know what people are so upset about. But they go to a lot of, the problem is they raise your taxes, not just for the schools, but the Democrats will always raise your taxes because they want to do other stuff. They just don't want to have good schools. They all of a sudden want to put community pools in and, get rid of racist bridges and all this other shit. National Review, the autonomous zones are back. Last month, a police officer in Madison, Wisconsin, was attacked by a knife-wielding man who was resisting arrest. The officer responded with deadly force, shooting and killing 22-year-old Corey Ruiz, who is identified as Black or Latino in Wisconsin court records. Oh, no. Like I said, and I will continue to say, if you resist arrest, right, you certainly will be arrested. You'll certainly, or try to run away, you certainly will be caught and tried. But very likely, not even very likely, there is some likelihood that you could be killed. Sorry, don't resist arrest. That's all I have to say. Now, the case with, it wasn't George Floyd. What was that other guy? Again, George Floyd was resisting arrest. He died of more likely of a health condition induced by a drug overdose. I think intentional, but I'm going to get into that. And he was being restrained with a lawful restraint, which is a knee on the neck, on the back of the neck. It wasn't on his throat. So just be clear that in, was it Michigan? Where is George Floyd? Minneapolis, Minnesota. That is a lawful restraint. It's not the same for all states. But the other one, which is, what was the guy with his hands up? Don't shoot. The account of that was false. Okay. He charged that the officer, whether that guy should have been shot dead. Whatever. Don't charge at officers, right? When the thing is that we were having a discussion, my wife and I, when we were out for sushi last night, and some guy in the restaurant lost his shit and started screaming and yelling, and then he was asked to leave, and then he kept pushing the restaurant owner, and it started picking a fight with people in the establishment until the cops came, and then he was arrested because he was asked to leave. He finally left, and then he came back in. So that's criminal trespass. But we were talking about it yesterday and saying you have to comply with police. I don't care if you're innocent or guilty or you feel you're being picked on or you think the officer's racist, whatever. You need to comply with police. In my 30 years in journalism, I often was at emergency scenes, crisis scenes where I had to deal with police trying to get the story. You have to comply with police or you end up in the back of a police car. Or worse for some people. There's no if, ands, or but about it. You have to go. If police say roll down the window, roll down the window. If police say show me some identification, you got to show identification. If they say you got to stand there and not there, you got to do it. The only thing you don't need to comply with is questions. You have the right not to incriminate yourself. So you have the right to remain silent. You've heard that in the Miranda rights forever. PJ Media story number 22, socialism perfect failure record is worth recalling in the voting booth. Of course it is. Michigan. We talked a lot about Michigan. Kansas. Missouri. Virginia are all marquee contests. Significant ballot measures and other elections that could tilt this ship into socialism. Washington uses this nonpartisan top two primary system where all candidates appear on one ballot and the top two vote getters advance to the general election. We're watching all these races, but keep in mind that this guy, what was his name? I think he wrote in Town Hall, the evil of socialism is not a bug, but rather a feature. Remember, it's driven by hate. Hate of the normal, hate of the smarter, hate of the better, hate of your parents who just didn't get you, And every single time it's put into practice, we see the same thing. Since everything in socialism goes against human nature, the natural order, you need, because socialism is technocracy. It's the human's idea about how humans should behave in a certain order, that ignores all the natural process. Since everything in socialism goes against human nature, you need an apparatus of repression designed to force people to accept what nature rejects. This couldn't be clearer. There's not a socialist country without a thuggish police. There's not a socialist country where you can speak freely. There's not a socialist country where you're free because your freedom defeats the whole purpose of socialism, which is ensuring your submission to the cadres. Indeed. Now, you could say we have thuggish police here. If you're a taxpayer, I would disagree. The problem is if you don't own property, you're like, what do we need police for? If you're a criminal, you're like, I don't like police. Police here aren't thuggish. What I said here is you have to comply with the requests of the police. And the police are they're there to protect. The whole purpose is for them to protect private property. So if you're a socialist, of course you don't like that. They want to take over the police to help seize property, which the whole quest for freedom and goods is part of human nature. You want more food, you want more clothing, want more fuel. So here are all the wonderful success stories of socialism in alphabetical order. Angola, Algeria, Albania, Aragon, Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Austria, Benin, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Belarus, Catalonia. I mean, a lot of these were socialist at once and aren't anymore, but you could see how socialism has made them into great states. Cape Verde, Cuba, Cambodia, China, Chile, Congo, Czechoslovakia, Djibouti, Egypt, Estonia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Grenada, Gambia, Ghana, Georgia, not the state, the country, East Germany, actually all of Germany under the Nazis. Remember, the Nazis were socialist. Hungary, India, Iraq. Iraq is debatable. North Korea, Kampuchea, Cambodia. Libya, Latvia, Lithuania, Markatelia, Mozambique, Mongolia, Mali, Majabad, Myanmar, Madagascar, Mauritania, Nicaragua, Poland, Romania, Russia, Syria, Slovenia, Senegal, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Tunisia, Tuva, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, Venezuela, Yemen, Yugoslavia, Zambia, Zanzibar, and Zimbabwe. All very successful countries. Maybe Austria. Socialism doesn't work. Socialism is a road to authoritarianism, and it's built that way on purpose. What it's meant is to suck the wealth out of property owners until they're forced to flee. That's a full alphabet's worth of breadlines and secret police, every single one of them promising the exact same paradise, and every single one of them delivering the exact same rubble. Instead, 60 plus failures so profound that they have a large body count. At some point, that stops being bad luck, it's no bug, and starts looking suspiciously like a pattern. You betcha. Freedom. And that means free capital as well. Freedom is what drives prosperity of the community. You know, total prosperity. Not just a rising tide, the economy lifts all boats. Now, if you want to sit on your ass and play video games, or you want to put piercings in your face and tattoo your face, or walk into a job interview with purple hair, you're like, it's not fair. I mean, AI aside, it's not fair that I don't get hired. And most people are illiterate. So they don't know how to speak. They don't know how to write. They don't, especially people coming out of the pandemic, they don't know how to interact properly, read body language, etc. Don't know how to communicate, physically communicate with people, to put people at ease. Most of the young people are all shifty and suspicious. Um, that's no way to get a job. Also, it's not society's problem, or it's not their job to give you a job. Your job is to make sure you can make money, to make yourself marketable. Either be able to start a business or join a business. And if you join a business, you have to bring something to the table. If you're just like an entry level, I just want a job, man, entry level positions, those are all being taken by AI. You have to say, I want to make money. How am I going to make money? You got to bring value to the table. So what are you going to do that brings value to a company? Or can you start your own company? You're smart enough. And if you believe that, then you'll think freedom of business and capital are important, because that's going to forward your destiny. If you think that it's society's job to provide for you, you got another thing coming. Like I said, I believe in the social safety net, but it should be there for people who can't go out and work. The physically infirmed, or the mentally infirmed, or the elderly, which usually has to do with the former. If you're older, maybe you're in a wheelchair, you can't get around or whatever, you have health problems, or to get people back on their feet. But a young, able-bodied person who didn't apply themselves in school, or apply themselves, it's like the old adage is like they look down their nose, or they disrespect people that are learned, that read books and stuff like that. Yeah, why, increase your knowledge, that you would bring something to the table. Sorry, that was a little rant there. PJ Media, story number 23, Michigan and the Democrats at the crossroads of history. A left-wing populist uprising in the heart of America may tip the scales for radicalism for the Democrats and force America to choose between maintaining the status quo or being submerged in a socialist tide that would begin to alter the character of the United States. And I said that previously. The clash of American values and virtues with socialism isn't new in Michigan. In the late 19th and 20th century, socialism made major inroads in the labor movement. Detroit became a hub for early anarchist and socialist organizing, driven by rapid industrialization and European immigration. People like Joseph Labadie organized Detroit's Knights of Labor in 1878, while the Industrial Workers of the World, or Wobblies, led major auto strikes in 1913. A radical faction led by John Kuracker took over the Socialist Party of Michigan in the late 1910s before splitting off into the Proletarian Party. That's the thing, is the late 19th century drove socialism, obviously after Das Kapital and so forth and so on, but because of industrialization and the exploitation of workers. But you don't have that now. You could, especially in America, you could start your own business. You got to have a business plan. You got to get some startup capital, and then you go to it. Just the news, Mike Lindell, Story number 24, just the news. Mike Lindell steps down as CEO of MyPillow amid Minnesota gubernatorial bid. He's stepping down as the company's CEO in order to devote his full attention to his gubernatorial campaign in Minnesota. I hope he wins. That's what they need in the Midwest. They need someone like Mike Lindell. And people don't like him because he liked Trump. This whole thing about not liking Trump, that's all in your head, bro. Trump's just a guy. No different than anybody else. You might not like him. I never liked Trump, to be honest with you. Never watched The Apprentice. Didn't like him as a real estate mogul in Manhattan. He's kind of a goofball, kind of a clown. Whatever. I don't vote. I vote on policy. And that's what makes the difference between voting for someone competent and a socialist. is because a socialist policy platform isn't going to help you. Never has. Never hasn't helped anybody. They promise to help you, just like the Democrats have promised to help you, but they don't help you. They promise $8 billion to help the homeless in California. $8 billion. What happened? The homeless population grew. Why? Because they had $8 billion. So all the homeless from around the country go, let's go to California. The weather's nice, and they have $8 billion to give us. Unheard says the DNC is stuck in a death spiral. Now, the Unheard is kind of a leftist magazine. Democratic National Committee is weathering an onslaught of brutal press reports less than 100 days before the midterms. Despite surging momentum in swing states, Democrats are in a dire fiscal situation and seem to be reeling from internal drama. The internal drama is they're being taken over by socialists, which is, the socialist wing of the Democratic Party is the anti-establishment wing. And so I predicted this back in 2014, 2015, that the anti-establishment folks are going to take over the parties because the voters are sick and tired of the establishment, because it became the uniparty working against the citizenry, the voter, and more for special interest. AMAC, New York City Mayor Mamdani demands ID for groceries, but not for voting. The New York City mayor has become the latest Democrat, earning widespread mockery for his hypocritical stance on requiring ID to buy groceries, but not to vote. Socialism is hypocrisy, and you'll see. Don't forget, the socialists work with the corporatists all the time, right? They just don't let you start a business. Right? Socialists don't give you seed money to start a business. What they do is they plague you with regulations and fees, so it puts starting a business out of the reach of the common person. It's all political rhetoric you're spewing. No, I'm not. Go start a business. Particularly in a blue state, you'll see what the problem is. And especially if it's an urban area and you're operating a storefront, oh my gosh. The P and Z will get you. The Federalist, story number 27, Republicans calling your opponents communism isn't enough, as Breonna Lyman. Marxism doesn't carry the same stigma it once did. The left has repackaged its radical ideas as equity and equality, and as one woman told me, being for the people. Well, they always said that. Commune means community. It's for the people, one woman told Brianna Monday. I was asking people about Mayor Mamdani's plans to implement free buses, city-run grocery stores, and other social programs funded by taxing the rich even more. In most cases, the people I spoke with weren't too bothered by Mamdani's plans to strangle the rich. In fact, they agreed with the premise that people should contribute whatever they can afford so everyone could have what they need. What a bunch of shit. The problem is when you go with socialism, you don't get what you need. Look what happened in Venezuela. Look what happened in Cuba. Look what happened in the Soviet Union. You had to stand in a fucking bread line. You don't get what you need. It's rationed health care. You got to wait in a line to see a doctor. And then their prescription is always, here's a cane. Marxism doesn't carry the same stigma it once did. Once the voters accept the premise that communism is actually a benevolent force for the people, revealing its origins does little to change their mind, of course. That's a problem for Republicans whose chief argument against rising socialist ties is consistently pointing at Democrats and shouting communist. Right, it doesn't have the same weight it once did. But that doesn't mean I don't think it works. The problem is what you have to do is kind of remind people of the record. They promise you utopia and you get bread lines instead. Brooklyn DSA member Tied to Mamdani's admin, tenant advocate wants rent abolished. This is from the post-millennial story number 28. Vargas argued that legislative victory should serve as a foundation for a much broader political movement. Nicholas Vargas, Brooklyn DSA member and founding organizer with Brooklyn Eviction Defense, has been revealed to be a prominent voice in the movement advocating for the abolition of rent. People don't know how modern economics work, right? You just want to go stay at a place and not pay any money? How does that work? You know what that is? That's called a tenement. Why don't you just get the state to pay for the tenement? And you know what happens in tenements? When people don't have jobs or something worthy to do during the day, they rob, cheat, and steal. And so that's why most of the housing authority got rid of tenements. You want to know why? Is because those places were riddled with crime. Because when you take a bunch of people that don't have anything and you put them all together, you get crime. So like in my state and the municipalities where I worked, what you have is it's Section 8, or you get subsidized housing, but that subsidized housing is a percentage of regular housing all over the city, instead of building a tenement and putting everybody in there. Because I'm telling you, that when I was covering my city, that's where all the crime was, in those tenements, where you had young people. What they would do is shoot out all the floodlights, and you drive into these tenements, these complexes, and there are no lights there. And that's so the hoodlums could run around robbing people or selling drugs or whatever. Just the news story number 29, Susan Collins will vote against Todd Blanche for AG. If we didn't need Susan Collins, and do we need Susan Collins? She never votes with Republicans. So big surprise, she's going to vote against Todd Blanche, which I imagine Lisa Murkowski will also vote against Todd Blanche. Will John Thune vote against Todd Blanche? One American News report, USA expands CIA presence and intelligence operations in Cuba. The United States has increased its intelligence assets in Cuba in recent months, including deploying additional spies and expanding the Central Intelligence Agency's presence on the island. Citing two people familiar with the Trump administration's plans, the move is allegedly part of a broader effort to pressure Cuba's communist government to reform or collapse, and could support options ranging from stepped-up efforts to recruit Cuban officials or citizens to be a potential U.S. military to have a potential U.S. military operations. The administration's fight against communism is wide-ranging and immense, and I applaud it for it, because the war against socialism is everywhere. It's on your street and it's abroad. And the reason is, as I often said, socialism is the controlled opposition to the corporate elite. And if you don't understand that, you will. What they want to do is to put the common man in a controlled squalor. Everybody's equal, right? Equally poor, right? With no upward mobility. And then the elite will govern at the top, and they'll be outside of the socialist bubble, running the Duma or the Politburo or the political workings, the administrators of the technocracy, the socialist state. Speaking of socialism, Trump administration revokes visa of Brazil's ambassador to U.S. and spat with Lula. Whoops. Trump administration has revoked the visa of Brazil's ambassador to the United States in retaliation for Brazil's denial of visas last month for two American diplomats who sought to visit ahead of upcoming elections, as well as what it said was Brazil stalling on approving President Donald Trump's nominee to be the ambassador of Brasilia. Right, because we want to monitor the elections there, because the elections that got the communist Lula da Silva elected, even though the fact that he had been tried and convicted of corruption after his last presidency, is that it was a rigged election, specifically rigged by the Brazilian Supreme Court, which is full of socialists. More about socialism. Fox News story number 32. Luigi Mangione's live stream stunt aims to get influencers to pressure jurors, former prosecutor says. Former federal prosecutor Ramani says the defense wants influencers to keep the case viral and enable nullification. So usually defense attorneys don't want coverage in the live coverage in the courtroom because it works against them. But in this case, the defense attorneys believe that Mangione's charisma and his fan base warrant a live stream of the trial, thinking it would boost his popularity and lead to a mistrial or jury nullification. So they want the live streaming to affect the jury pool. Right. Mangione's attorneys want the trial proceedings to be live streamed to pressure jurors. More attention creates a possibility of jury nullification or maybe even an acquittal. Just a news story number 33. SCOTUS set to revisit gun laws in next term dealing with assault weapons ban. The nation's highest court took up Viramontes versus Cook County and Grant versus Higgins, cases out of Illinois and Connecticut, respectively. Connecticut, that's my state, that deal with challenges to assault weapons bans. The 2022 decision in Brune versus New York Rifle and Pistol Association will play out in the states. In Brune, the High Court ruled in favor of 2 concealed carry permit holders and to maintain their weapons. The case overturned a New York law that required individuals to show a special need for self-protection. In the Brune case, the court ruled governments must produce historically analogs on firearm place restrictions that justify depriving individuals of their Second Amendment rights. No shit. Everybody should be able to have an AR weapon, a rifle. Now, I understand, like in Connecticut, we have, and nationally, there's a SBR short-barreled rifle restriction. If you want to take it across state lines, or in some states even possess it at all, you might need to register it with the ATF. I understand that, only because a short-barrel rifle, obviously very short-barrel rifle, can be concealed. And it proves to be a risk in robberies and shootings and so forth and so on. So I can understand that. I might not agree with it, but I understand it. But I think everybody should be able to possess, carry a pistol, certainly, and possess a rifle. Regardless of magazine, you know, maybe if you want to ban drum magazines or whatever, you know, but the standard 30-round magazine should be allowed. Just don't understand that. Despite what happened in Idaho or anywhere else. Armed society is a polite society. Let more people carry guns, and then people that use guns in crime will be less apt to do so. Why? Because as soon as they pull it out, everybody's going to pull their gun and shoot them. Connecticut, my state, lists 70 firearms it bans under its assault weapons prohibition, and Illinois lists 100 firearms, including semi-automatic weapons with detachable magazines. Come on. Justices of the nation's highest court will need to clarify whether assault weapons bans are determined based on magazine capacity, kinds of gun stocks, or automatic weapons altogether. We have both. We have, my rifle has to have a pistol grip, a pistol grip or front grip, and a pistol brace, and not a fixed stock. And the magazine can only hold 10 rounds. It only takes 1 round. So if I have to kill 10 people, then I have enough rounds. That brings us to our next story, post-millennial story number 34. In-N-Out gunman Chad Williams spent months complaining online about violent crime before deadly Idaho rampage. Chad Williams, who died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after Saturday's mass shooting at In-N-Out Burger in Twin Falls, had previously posted extensively about violent crime, public safety, blah, blah, blah. Maintained an X account where he frequently commented on politics and current events until July 2025. So I'm not going to get into the rest of it where he makes the complaints. But what happened between July 2025 and July 2026? Was there no commenting on his X account? Or did he stop commenting on crime? My thing is, there's a certain period of time, usually about a year, where people are groomed by people online. That they may or may not be on medication, they may have mental illness, so they're targeted by the actors online to get them to commit violent acts. Sometimes people are groomed to go into politics, and they're groomed into adopting socialist points of view. This happened with Barack Obama. He disappeared for a year, ended up in Afghanistan, then he turns up at Harvard. The next thing you know, he's a state senator, and a year later, he's a United States senator, and then a year later, he's president. Manchurian candidate. So it doesn't take much for the powers that be to get their claws into somebody and make them do something. But usually what you see is a fall off of a map. All of a sudden they sort of like, and this happened to Ocasio-Cortez also. She quit her bartender job. Nobody knows what she did. Dropped out of school. Or was she still in school? No, she was out of college already. Whatever. She quit her bartender job. She disappeared for a year and then all of a sudden emerged as this socialist candidate for the House of Representatives. And all of a sudden, apparently being dumb as a rock, all of a sudden comes out and has all these leftist political ideas. Crazy. PJ Media, Bill Gates was embedded in U.S. agencies during COVID era. We know this. What the heck was billionaire techie Bill Gates so deeply involved with top policymakers for years at the Department of Energy and the National Institutes of Health? From 2014 to 2021 to the beginning, he had high Q security clearance for 7 years at DOE. He was associated with Fauci as a private editor during the COVID-19 lockdown. Gates bragged about at the World Economic Forum conference in 2019 that he made billions off investing in vaccines. Bill Gates had a Q clearance and a private editor at the NIH. The Gates Foundation also, for some reason, received multiple briefings about military biological threat programs. Right, those labs that we heard about in Ukraine. Notably, the Gates Foundation was implicated in the deadly vaccine and sterilization scandals in multiple African and Asian countries, including India and several countries, the very country that Gates claimed he wanted to help in 2025. In 2024, Gates referred to India as kind of a laboratory to try things, and Africa as well. I mean, most of the polio in the world was caused by the oral vaccine. Unrelated news here, Article 36, post-millennial Andy No reports Zizian death cult murder trial delayed again. Why? Is because it's been delayed again in the murder of one of their own and a murder of their landlord. Why was it delayed? Their case has been repeatedly delayed after defensive attorneys successfully argued that neither defendant was competent to stand trial. Because they're insane. If you're transgender and you don't say, yes, I'm a man, I just want to become a woman. If you think there's a woman living inside you that you have to realize, that's gender dysphoria, that's mental illness. So apparently they're crazy because one of the accused, Alexander Leatham, disrupted legal proceedings by repeatedly shouting about trans genocide and making unsubstantiated allegations that jail officers were sexually assaulting him and trying to murder him. Yeah, they're crazy. People don't understand. It's just like, oh, love is love. Hate has no home here. I don't hate transgender people. I'm just to give people that are obviously have some mental illness their due is ridiculous. We're not talking about LGBTQ. Well, we're not talking about gay and lesbian people, let's just say. That they don't think they're something they're not. They're just have a sexual perversion and proclivity that, they like the same sex. Okay, whatever. I don't consider that mental illness. It's just sexual preference. Post-millennial, again, 37, number 37. Appeals court upholds Florida ban on children attending sexualized drag shows. The Attorney General and Florida Protection of Children Act makes it a misdemeanor to knowingly admit a child to an adult live performance that depicts nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, or specific sexual activities, lewd conduct, or lewd exposure of prosthetic or imitation genitalia or breasts. And they said saying lewd is way overboard. That's what I mean. They have a sexual perversion, but to them, to most people, lewd exposure, lewd conduct in front of a child, that's going overboard? You can't do that. I mean, what the fuck? The problem is what they think what they do is the behavior's been so normalized that any criticism is always sought with, what are you talking about? Not lewd. I'm just shaking my ass in a 6-year-old's face. Next story up. Post-millennial trans influencer Sydney Starr charged with child sex crimes in Georgia. Sydney Favors, 37, has been charged with sexual battery against a child under 16. Apparently forced the child, or maybe didn't force the child, asked the child to perform fellatio. We don't have any further information because it's a child. Oh, Favors was performing oral sex on a minor in a hotel and confessing to the fact. Ugh. You got to be careful about your morals where you start normalizing things. People under 18 are minors and you can't have sex with a minor. Heterosex or gay sex or whatever. Last article up, UK Express. America preparing for nuclear war with Russia and China as bombshell plans leaked. There wasn't much of, people familiar with the plans, told NBC News. Defense Department Policy Chief Elbridge Colby is overseeing the strategy that emphasizes the possible use of short-range tactical nuclear weapons in the event of a nuclear conflict. Yeah, we're going to prepare for anything where China is concerned, right? We're par for the course, about an hour and 15 minutes. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. I'm here every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. or so. It's after 10, I would say. Between 10 and 10:30, I try to get the live stream up. It was late today. It was like 10:30 because, as I mentioned before, I was inundated with a bunch of incoming responsibilities that I had to handle immediately. But thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you all. So join me tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Don't forget you're under attack psychologically and biologically, especially for some of you in the middle or on the left. You've been being bombarded by things you might not discern properly. Just remember, this is a great country and that gives you agency as a citizen of the country, and that if you use that agency properly, you could, I don't know, make a lot of money, or at least make enough money to be secure in your life and in retirement. All right, thanks for joining me. We'll see you tomorrow. Respect.
people are crazy.
The New World Order.
American, I have rights.